The first pickup came around the bend so fast I had to swerve my ATV into the ditch grass to keep from being clipped. I was hauling fence wire back to the north pasture, nothing dangerous, nothing in anyone's way, except I was on my own road, and apparently that didn't matter anymore. The truck didn't even slow down. Then came a minivan, then 2 sedans with kids in the back seat, then a landscaping trailer that took the blind curve by my equipment, shed wide enough to snap a fence post clean off. I sat there on the ATV, engine idling, watching 6 vehicles in a row use a road that had never once appeared on a county map as anything but private agricultural access, my road. My grandmother's road, technically, deeded to her in 1968, deeded to me 9 years ago when she passed. I flagged down the last car in line. The driver, a woman with a Fernbrook Ridge parking sticker on her windshield, rolled down her window like I was the one being unreasonable. "Sorry, is this not the shortcut?" She asked. I told her there was no shortcut. There was my farm. She held up her phone. An email, HOA letterhead, subject line, temporary detour, Fernbrook access corridor. That was the first time I heard the word corridor used to describe a gravel lane that led to my hay barn. Before I go further, have you ever had someone in a position of authority decide your property, your time, or your work didn't matter as much as their convenience? Tell me in the comments where that happened and how you got your ground back. And if you've dealt with an HOA, a bad neighbor, or someone who thought a title meant they didn't need permission, stick around, because this story has a document in it that changed everything overnight. My name doesn't matter much here. What matters is the road and the people who decided it was theirs to use. It started as a cattle path before my grandmother ever owned it outright. Her husband widened it in the 1960s, so a feed truck could get through without tearing up the pasture. It ran off County Road 9, curved past the lower field, crossed a shallow culvert, and ended at the barnyard. Gravel in the dry months, mud in the wet ones. Nobody's idea of scenic, just useful, the way farm roads are supposed to be. Fernbrook Ridge went up on the hill behind my property about 6 years ago. 40-some homes, one main entrance off the state highway, wrought iron gate, the whole look. I didn't think much about them. They had their entrance. I had mine. For a while, that was that. Then the HOA got a new board. The new board had opinions about traffic. The main gate, it turned out, backed up badly during school hours and worse during the holidays. Instead of fixing the gate, somebody on that board looked at a satellite map, saw my gravel lane running close enough to their back fence line, and decided it solved their problem for them. I know this because I still have the email. Back in the spring, before any of this happened, their property manager reached out asking whether the HOA could explore using my road as a secondary access point during peak hours. I wrote back one line, no. It's private agricultural land, not covered by any easement, and it's not safe for regular vehicle traffic. I never heard back. I assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't the end. It was just the pause before they stopped asking. The email the driver showed me that day had gone out to the entire neighborhood that morning. Main gate resurfacing was starting. Residents were instructed to use the Fernbrook access corridor, my road, as a temporary detour for the next 10 days. Security volunteers would be posted to help direct traffic. Please drive carefully through the shared corridor. The email said, and be respectful of the agricultural neighbor. The agricultural neighbor. That was me. Nobody had used my name. Nobody had asked my permission. They'd simply decided, on their own letterhead, that my road belonged to their traffic plan. By that afternoon, there was a folding sign at the entrance off County Road 9. Fernbrook Ridge, temporary access. A man in a reflective vest was waving cars through like he had every right to be standing on my property directing traffic. I walked up to him and asked who authorized this. He said the HOA board did. I told him this was private land. He said he was just doing what he was told. That's when the HOA president pulled up in a golf cart. Her name was Donna. She had the calm, faintly irritated tone of someone who deals with complaints for a living and has learned to treat every complaint as an inconvenience rather than a problem. "We really appreciate your patience during construction," she said, like we'd already agreed to something. I told her we hadn't agreed to anything. I told her I'd said no back in the spring, in writing, and that nothing had changed since then. Donna's expression flattened. "The board felt this was the safest option available. We're calling it a shared corridor out of respect for your land use." "It's not shared," I said. "It's mine." "Well," she said, "we don't have anywhere else to send them right now." I looked past her at the line of cars still creeping down my lane, at the fence post already lying in the grass where the landscaping trailer had clipped it, at my dog pacing nervously by the barn because the noise wouldn't stop. I told Donna to get her sign, her volunteer, and her cars off my property by end of day. She said if I blocked the road, she'd have no choice but to call the sheriff for obstructing a necessary community route. That was the moment I stopped arguing and started recording. I want to be clear about something. I didn't win this because I yelled the loudest or because I stood in the road and refused to move. I won it because I went home that night and pulled every piece of paper I had. The original 1968 deed, which listed the road as part of the parcel, not as a public or shared way. The county's parcel records, which showed no dedication, no HOA easement, no right of way of any kind running through my land. The spring email exchange, where I had already told the HOA in writing that this road was not available for their use. And buried in an old folder my grandmother had kept, the county's original approval file for Fernbrook Ridge, the same file that showed their subdivision plan, had one main entrance and one emergency only secondary access, both located entirely on land the developer owned. My road wasn't in that file at all. Not as a backup, not as an alternate, not as anything. I called the county the next morning. I called my attorney the morning after that. And I called a surveyor because the sign, the cones, and the volunteer were all standing several feet inside my property line, not on the county right of way like the HOA had assumed. My attorney read through everything and said one sentence that stuck with me. "They wrote down that this road belongs to your land use. That's not a small thing. That's them admitting on paper that they knew it wasn't theirs." He sent a letter that afternoon, cease and desist, demand for removal of signage, demand for correction to residents, and notice that any further use would be treated as trespass. He copied the county road department, the HOA's management company, and their insurance carrier. Donna didn't respond to the letter. The traffic didn't stop. So 3 days later, a county road inspector came out to see it for himself. He didn't need long. He looked at the parcel map, looked at the deed, looked at the subdivision's approved access plan, and looked at the sign sitting inside my fence line. Then he asked Donna, who'd come down to meet him, what legal right the HOA had to route traffic through my property. She said it was temporary. He asked if it was permitted. She said the board felt it was the safest option. He asked again if it was permitted. She didn't have an answer that wasn't some version of "we needed somewhere to send them." He told her, in front of everyone standing there, that a construction inconvenience did not create an easement, and that continuing to direct residents through private land after written refusal could expose the HOA to liability for trespass and property damage. He ordered the sign and cones removed that day. The volunteer took the sign down while Donna stood there with her arms crossed, watching her shortcut disappear in real time. The HOA sent a correction email within hours, clipped, formal, clearly drafted by a lawyer who'd just gotten off the phone with mine. Residents were told the temporary corridor was no longer available, that it had never been an approved access point, and that any further use would be considered a violation of the neighboring landowner's rights. They didn't apologize. They didn't have to. The word unauthorized was enough. At the next HOA meeting, which I didn't attend but heard about secondhand from a resident who lived near the gate, Donna tried to frame it as a safety decision made under pressure. Someone asked why the board hadn't checked the deed first. Nobody had a good answer. Someone else asked who was going to pay for the fence post and the torn-up shoulder along my lane. That question turned out to matter a lot more to people than Donna's explanation did. The HOA ended up covering the repair costs along with my attorney's fees as part of a settlement that came with no admission of wrongdoing attached, which is the kind of sentence that means everything and nothing at the same time. I didn't care much about the wording. I cared that the sign was gone, the traffic was gone, and the road was mine again. A few weeks later, the fence post was reset, the gravel regraded, and the ditch cleared of the ruts left behind. I put up a new sign at the entrance off County Road 9. Simple, direct, private road, no HOA access. Verified by county record. Donna didn't run for board president again that year. I think about that email sometimes, the one where they called it a shared corridor. Like giving something a soft enough name could make it true. It couldn't. A GPS line doesn't make a road public. A sign in the ground doesn't make it permission. And 100 cars driving through your land don't add up to an easement, no matter how many of them there are. One document in a county file ended it overnight. But it was only there to find because somebody, a long time before me, had the sense to keep it.